Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. I am your host, Christopher Mader. Once again, we're filming this here at the Osgood Bradley building on the 4th floor at the Liberty Clubhouse, and running for state rep in the 4th district, currently seated by Dennis Rosa, who's a Democrat, is my good guest, David Phillipo. How are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
I'm very good. I'm happy to be here. And
had no trouble getting here, obviously.
Yeah, I got really used to the area. I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up in Natick, but before I moved to Leominster, I lived in Medford. I worked throughout various places in the state, so I know my way.
Yeah, you know your way around. Of course, yeah, everybody. Yeah, it's not that big a state, so yeah, definitely. So, tell us about you, how you got started in this, and you just said you grew up in the state. You know, where'd you go to school? Tell us about David.
Okay, well, so I started at the early beginning. I said I was born in Natick. I was born in '82. I'm 31 years old, a little bit of a young guy, as I was told by a lot of people in the campaign. I started out in the public school system, became a homeschool student, admittedly. But admittedly, that opened me a lot of doors. I actually was appointed by the local board of selectmen.
Really?
In Natick to be on the board of directors for Natick-Pegasus Natick-Pegasus Inc., the local cable access station.
No kidding.
And helped it get from the ground up. And it was a very interesting experience. We actually let it redo the building very much like this building, as I think I hinted at before. And it was a great opportunity. I had a lot of fun with it. Unfortunately, I had to go to college and kind of competed with the time, so I had to let that go. Went to Middlesex Community College for 2 years, studied communications. Did not get my degree there, but did go on to Emmanuel College, where I got my Bachelor of Arts in Communications and a minor in Performance Arts.
Excellent.
Yeah. And then after working there, I did some teaching while I was working. I was an ESL, English as a second language instructor.
Really?
And really,
what's the other language that you speak?
I
was going to say, what's your name? Is that Portuguese?
It's Italian.
Oh, okay.
But admittedly, it was Spanish, and admittedly, my Spanish was a lot better than it is now. And what helped me was I had a great Spanish professor, Lavinia Lumbreras. I don't know if anybody might remember her, but she was a great professor, and she helped me work out in her nonprofit called Alma Lingua Academies, and I took time helping her, volunteered, I wasn't paid, and it was a great opportunity, and I was actually a lot of applying for a position with a company called NBCCES, which they taught me what's called immersion language, where I was teaching students of various languages, kind of American culture, and continuing their education in the American language, English. That was a very good experience. And then when I left college, when I did it all in college, I did work at a company called Computer Share, which is a stock transfer company. I didn't want to stay there too long, and then I've been serving the last almost 8 years of Constant Contact, where I do customer support.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a day to do a lot of online sort of marketing stuff, because the same contract, we sell a lot of products that help people, do your email marketing. If you want email campaigns to send out, if you need some surveys that you want the information tracked for, we'll do that for you. If you're planning an event, we'll track all that for you. If you want to grow likes on your Facebook page, we've got a great tool for that, as well as we also have a tool called Single Platform.
Geez, maybe I haven't talked to you.
Oh yeah,
doing some stuff on the M&P page.
I'm more than happy to do it.
Yeah, we started a second one, the Conservative Media Network, and there's pay options on there where I can boost you know more about it than I do, but you can boost it. Of course, you got to pay, whip out a credit card, and you can boost your links, everything else. So we've started that, but that was quite literally just started about a week ago. So what made you get into doing this campaign? What was the impetus?
I'll take like a little step back.
Go ahead.
It's a child, because it's kind of a different route, because they're obviously kind of not directly connected. But as a child, I always liked the presidents. I always used to get all the books and read them and flew through, and always thought it was fascinating to learn about them. And then, of course, picture day, I got excited as all hell, because I got to dress up in a suit and be like the president. And it was great in attacking your childhood.
Right.
Yeah. And then as I got older, I started learning about history, and even as I got older, I started really learning about politics and politicals. And admittedly, even though I was always Republican, I used to admire a lot more Democrats, and used to be a little bit, unfortunately, more liberal-minded than I was. is about liberal solutions. They sound great. And you look at, of course we want to help the poor. Of course we want to make sure people are disadvantaged and do what we can. And maybe, yeah, the rich are paying, they're not paying their fair share. Let's go and get their money. But what people fail to realize is what it does. It's what it does to the world. Because if you take money away from them, then they're just as poor as you are. It's not going to make it. And if you're working for less, who's going to want to make more jobs? They're working for less. Also, too, if we tax them more, they're either going to do a few things. One, they're not going to hire as many jobs. They're either going to raise the prices of things for you and I cost more, or they're just going to go out of business. So what's the alternative?
And there's no incentive anymore. There's no incentive anymore to want to invent something. I'll tell you, there's a ton of stuff that you see on YouTube, all over the internet, people doing stuff in their own garages and coming up with things. And they're all great ideas. You'll never see these things mass-produced. You'll never see them mass-produced because of corporations that already got things sewn up and they don't want any type of competition. The other thing, too, is everything is so incredibly regulated. Even something as starting as simple as a book swap. I was reading about this a while ago, like a book swap. You have to not only register it as a business, but every single book. And you know how people are with books, they just dump them. If there's a yard sale, they throw them all out, take them for a dime, or buy one, get one free. Books are a dime a dozen. But according to some states, every single book that you have has to be registered. You have to make sure that the copyright is expired. You can't sell it. Stupid things like you got to rip the front cover off. And if you don't, you'll quite literally have what you see all the time on the internet. You'll have SWAT teams and, copyright people kicking in your doors and shutting your place down. Even something as simple as that. There's no incentive anymore for somebody to, I got a great idea. I want to do this. Oh, wait a minute. There's too many hoops and everything. And that's the other thing, too, is that one thing I love about Lemons and learning about is it was the center of the plastic industry. Sure. And unfortunately, a lot of what Democrats and particularly liberals want to do is that they're worried about the type of workers that come out of the factory lifestyle. Like, they seem to be shunning the idea of, Henry Ford and the assembly line process. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was great for business, and maybe there were not the greatest conditions for the employees. That doesn't mean that the industry itself is wrong. Maybe we could do more to help those people so there's a better working environment. I think they're also stuck in a time zone because they look at manufacturing, they look at American business, and they always default to the turn of the century, the Industrial Revolution, and they always seem to focus on that. In fact, sometimes when you see ads, they'll even use old type of film to show what's going on. And the entire process, the way people are today, we're far more savvy. We wouldn't stand for that anyway. It's got nothing to do with all this regulations protecting me. You and I, we were in a factory position, or you and I started a business, and we had a factory. We wouldn't be like, we got to get to work at 6 and work till 10 o'clock at night. There's no breaks, and we would never do something like that. We'd get punched in the face first. And admittedly, the working world hasn't changed too much. Yes, I work at a desk at constant contact, and I sit in front of a computer. But in a way, the length of my job is not much different than a 9-to-5 guy working in a store. The only difference is I'm in front of a computer and I have a degree. That's the only difference. Otherwise, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not much different than any other working class job. Yeah, there are days when you probably hate it and your back hurts. You're sitting in the chair all day long. I definitely need to lose some weight because a job where you sit down all day, you don't get the most exercise. Something I definitely need to work on. Hopefully the campaign will help me to do. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, you had the thing on the 11th, speaking about your campaign. It was with the Mass GOP. It was at Cornerstone's restaurant. You had a few people show up, not as many as that you would hope. But tell us about that. How did things go, at least, and what did you talk about? Well, I think they wanted me to do kind of like a 5-point speech to talk about myself, my background, and what it was to get out of the campaign. And really, I want to kind of reiterate what I talk about, kind of paraphrase it, is essentially the short of it, as I'm looking to get out there to represent the people of Worcester. I want to be a real representative. I have to check to see if Dennis has really done this. I do see he's out there. I'll give him that credit. But I really don't feel like a lot of representatives aren't really listening to the people. They come out like a dictator. Well, this is what's best for them. I'm going to pass this legislation. Right. That's not what I want. I'm going to be the guy that comes into your community. I'm going to have meetings up. I'm going to send emails out. This is the bill
jump the gun and say, well, this is how I feel about it, and hope you like it. No, that's not the type of that's not the way our founders wanted. We're supposed to be representatives, not dictators.
It seems to be that seems to be the way it is, even in our state house. We all know that trick. Everybody waits to see how the Leo's going to vote, and then everybody votes accordingly. And the other thing I wanted to cover is that you make a great point about you're not sure if you see Dennis around a lot. I see a lot of representatives now, and I meet a lot of people all the time simply because I'm involved in the show and I'm part of the Liberty movement. So I'm in touch with a lot of representatives and people running for office. But I've got to admit, you make a very good point. Before that, I don't remember actually seeing my representative's offices here in Worcester or a representative's office in Marlborough. They'd always see them at election time. You'd see them rent the store out, clean it up, post all the signs. You see them march in the Labor Day parade, the Memorial Day parade, this town or that town. But you never actually see the people. It's not like, well, where can I go to Dennis's office to talk to Dennis or talk to somebody and make sure Dennis gets this message, or I'm a local business owner and I'm having trouble with this permit process of the town. Is there something we can do? Is there something you can help out with? I don't see a lot of that here in Massachusetts. And is that something that you're talking about, that you really want to be a hands-on?
I want to be representing Leominster, not representing Beacon Hill. I want to be in Leominster most of my time. Listen, one time I'm going to leave is when I have to go vote for something.
True.
Or in case if I want to introduce new legislation, and I'm only going to be introducing new legislation based upon something that's impacting Leominster directly, that I think would help the whole state.
Right.
That would, that I would feel would help everybody. And it's across the scale, this whole issue, because an example of this, after putting it down, I really don't know about our new Senator Ed Markey, if he really lives up here or down in, or I think it's in Virginia.
Yeah, he's down there. He really is. I've looked into this, and this is the other thing. Same thing with Lizzie Hiawatha-Warren. I mean, her house, I think it's in Cambridge. She only bought that house relatively recently.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say just prior to her campaign, but of course these people, they plan a good year or so in ahead. So it wasn't like she lived there all her life type of thing. Whereas somebody like you grew up here in Massachusetts, you've been here, you've been around the area, you know how people take around here.
And maybe, admittedly, they are up here, and they just don't take the time to meet it with us, which is where they're wrong. Because a lot of Dennis, I actually bumped into Ed Markey because when I lived in Medford. He claims like that's his hometown. There's a Colleen's restaurant in Medford Square. If you ever want an opportunity to meet Ed Markey, occasionally around election time, you'll find him in there.
Yeah, go to the
and that's how I found him in there. I just watched back in 2012 he was debating against Tom Tierney, who was the Republican candidate, and I said, that's Ed Markey sitting over there. And I walked over, said hello, told him I'm a Republican, but he was very polite and cordial. He actually asked me how he did, I should say, how he did on his
in your area.
Mind you, when I was living there at the time. Very nice guy, but I'll tell you, that was the first time I was actually very surprised to see him there. And from what I've observed, from what Phil told me, that he's never really up there. He's never really in town. So either he is, and he just doesn't meet with the people, which is where he's wrong, or he just spent most of his time right there in D.C., so he doesn't have a long commute. Which is sad, because you go back in time, I really wonder about the poor people that were representing California that they come out on horseback every few months to vote.
Exactly.
God bless those people. Where the hell are those people? That now like, Nancy Pelosi needs an airplane to make sure she can get here.
With military escort.
Yeah. Come on, what are we going to do? It's another example where I really think the government has gone too far. I'd love to see a system where we limited their pay based upon the national, at least for federal employees, all levels, top to bottom.
Right.
Make it so that they can't get paid more than the national income average. What is it, like 50,000?
Sure, right.
That's capped it at that.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, and what's that too? It's funny. There's no federal government employee at the top. It's like a Supreme Court, House of Representatives, Senate office, you name it. The Secretary of Both. There's one office that is not paid enough, which is funny. Everyone's paid $100,000 plus, except for, which is weird, the Department of Education gets paid less than I do, and I can't quote the exact amount, but last time I checked, they're getting $29,000 a year. Now, I'm going to debate, do we need all these departments? I'd rather have, like education, I'd rather all handle locally. If I had my way, I'd rather do more to make it better locally. I think Leominster schools could be a lot better on their own.
Entire nation felt that way anyway, especially with Common Core. We can talk about that in a few minutes.
But what's odd is, why is that one the only one that pays $29,000? The veterans is the Democrats think they care so much about education. Why is that the one that we're paying the least? I mean, I'm only making $40,000 a year. This place
All right, so I was gonna ask you about children and Common Core and stuff.
I would support Common Core.
Yeah. There was just a protest a little while ago here. Arnie Duncan came to Worcester Vote Tech, right up here on Belmont Street, and Worcester Tea Party was there. A lot of people, the news covered it, and I've got to find some stuff on it and get that posted. But and Donna Colorio is coming. We're going to be at the Canal Bar on the 20th. The Tea Party is going to be you ought to show up there on the 20th. The Canal Bar is right over here on Water Street. At 7 o'clock, and we can talk afterwards about that, but she's going to come out. She used to be on the school committee, but we're going to talk about Common Core. The entire, Joseph Califano, former education secretary under Jimmy Carter, when it was first started, made the claim that the federal control of the curriculum is the federal control of ideas. And everybody, like everything else in government has inexorably gotten bigger and bigger. The plan starts out to do something good. You just covered that. But it invariably just gets, the application gets perverted, the purpose gets perverted, and what ends up happening is eventually the bill comes back up for reenactment, and they always find a way to say that things haven't gotten any better, so we need more money. Well, here's where we are with the educational department now. And Common Core was slipped in under part of the stimulus bill. So why don't you lend in and give enough dissertation on the history? What is your opinion? I mean, everybody I talk to, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, it gets down to the idea that we're letting the government decide too many things for us. And I think a lot of the problem is a lot of people don't underestimate themselves. Like honestly too, I really think, to kind of put it back into Leominster, we're smart people. We're not stupid idiots. We know how to come together and decide what curriculums are best for our children. We don't have the right to tell Fitchburg, which is a neighboring city to Leominster, and we don't have the right to tell people in Beverly Hills, California, how to raise their kids. Let's keep it in Leominster. We'll come together as parents, and we'll decide what's right for our children. We're not idiots. We know what's best for our children, and I'm sure we're all rational adults. We can decide what's right for our children. Maybe if the government wants to, then they can set suggestions. And if there's some people that want to go by the government, that's fine. That's their right as a parent.
Go back to block grants. Just if you apply for this, we can give you this grant money, X thousands of dollars, or maybe $1 million for this. If you come up with a program and you need a grant,
leave it simple. Leave it local. I mean, essentially, I don't want to go too far off of it, but I would love a system that got down just to bare local rules where we pay all of our taxes and we make all of our laws in the local city or town that we live in. Very little laws at the federal government, very little taxes at the federal level, and the state comes somewhere in the middle, and most of the decisions made right in town. That would include education. Us, the people, will decide it. We'll come together, we'll have a town meeting, a city meeting, we'll decide it, and if it doesn't work, there should be encouragement for people to secede, not from the country, but from a city or a town or enough people from a state and make their own community. That's what the founders intended upon.
Right.
We're the ever-growing, ever-evolving, changing shape community all over, whether it's a city or town changing shape, whether it's a state changing. We shouldn't be sitting for the country, because there's a reason why we're a country as a whole. That's why I would never support this substance abuse of war, which is a different topic. But I do support the idea, and it happens all the time. This Texas is a great example. They actually seceded from Dallas, Texas, because they didn't like the property taxes. And God bless them for doing it. And they have a great town that's still there today called Fish, Texas.
no kidding.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And I honestly think too, if people don't like the electric, which I just don't think we're being listened to. There's a lot of great ideas to change the electric around, and it really is. It's really expanding. A lot of them are afraid of electoral college, but the truth is it protects minority opinion. It does. It protects minority opinion, because if you think about it, if we just allow the popular vote, then pretty much we don't have to vote. Whatever Boston votes for here in Massachusetts, well, that's what's going to happen.
That's exactly
Whatever Boston votes for, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's a population thing, and that's also a problem with some of our congressmen to Washington and even our senators. Of course, we've changed the whole thing to now senators are just popularly elected. Very bad idea. But let's take the case of like Barney Frank's old district. If you look on the map, it's got probably the strangest shape of any district. It's got parts of down the South Shore, not necessarily the Cape, but the South Shore, the Taunton, Raynham area, that area down in there, Plainville, that kind of area. And then, which are substantial towns, but not as densely populated, they tend to run a little more conservative, a little more Republican. And I watched this at, I think it was in 2010. He was still there. It wasn't until later on that he decided to retire. But I noticed the way the voting went, and it was reported in one of the local news stations that most of that area voted for the Republican candidate. I forget who it was at the time. But then once the returns came in around the Natick, Wellesley, Cambridge, because of the population, and like I said, it's if you look at his district, it literally has like a turkey neck that runs up through, and then it's like this bubble of Metro West. And so again, when Metro West started voting, they all vote Democrat, and it was just a population thing. So a little gerrymandering going on there. So
which is why I really like the idea of expanding Liberty College to go to the point. Well, first I want to take up what Nebraska and Maine do, where you have to win their each individual districts. But I also think in that regard too is I think our founding fathers made a great mistake is they never dictated exactly what constitutes making a congressional district. It wasn't very specific. And the only thing I think that would make sense is if we take the number of total municipalities in the country, and we divide that by the number of states. And if I go correctly, that's like 1,760 districts. And then each state gets a percentage of that based upon the percentage of the population.
That's interesting.
So what I figured out was Massachusetts would get 37 congressional districts that way. So a little higher than before, but it's more representation. Because I really think it's all about the smaller communities. And we get more representation on the federal level that way. And there's less opportunity for somebody to be dictating overhead because our little community would be that much more represented. Sure. And also with that, and I also thought of rules to how we would win. A congressional district candidate in that regard would need to win the popular vote in a majority of cities and towns in that particular district to win. If they don't win the majority, they don't win it, and then essentially the top. I kind of make a clause because I hate people winning without a majority. But essentially, if there was everybody who won 30% or better, the electoral vote was split up for that people, whatever that one congressional district vote is. And whoever wins the majority, because right now when you're running an election, there's the 2 Senate seats, which are 2 electoral votes, and then there's whatever congressional districts are added up, right? So the winner of whoever won the majority, the popular vote in a majority of cities and towns in the entire state would get those 2 extra votes. Excellent. So it would really force a candidate to really get locally, get all around to get all those votes. Really force them to really make sure they're everywhere, and really force them to be in, and really make sure my vote is represented, not just one person. Because everything one vote, the one man, one vote, doesn't really work that way when you're not counted as a group. If you're counted as a group, you're going to be represented much better. And actually, too, it'll help you decide where they want to live. But don't you want to live with people that respect your viewpoint and know that your viewpoint is going to count something? And if we know that, say it happens to be Leominster goes typically more Republican than Democrat, or somewhere in the middle, we're going to clearly see that and know, okay, Leominster votes this way. This is a city or town that I want to live in because I see clearly how they vote. This is the area that I want to be where I know I'm going to be happy because they clearly share my values. It'll set a map like that. And pretty much you can do all elections like that. Like if you're running not for state rep, but for a representative, like in my district, the 2nd district, which is Andrew Brule, I am supporting him as a candidate, a Republican candidate for my district. What he would have to do in this case is he have to win to be elected. He have to win the popular vote in a majority of cities and towns in the 2nd congressional district. He'd have to win that to be able to win that seat. If you're running for Senate, because admittedly, like you said, it used to not be a popular vote decision. Sure. I hate the government's hand in too much. I think it's too much control for them to pick that person out. I'd rather keep us doing it, but I would kind of like I just said with the president, that to win, they have to win the popular vote in a majority of cities and towns in the entire state. And if we did it that way, Scott Brown would have won. He would have been elected and reelected, no question. Because if you look, more cities and towns, and Gabriel Gomez, the same thing. There are more cities and towns in the state that would prefer Republicans. And I really wish it was represented that way, because in the end, it's what your city and state does that represents you that's going to protect you. That should be the end result. If your city or town is voting opposite the federal government, the way things are structured now, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You're not going state rep or local governor's race, I think.
And do the same thing, apply.
Except it said, like, I used the example with the state, you make the counties replace the state. And I did that, there'd be 25 state congressional districts. So, admittedly, I'd be running for one of 25 for state rep, so.
Interesting. That's something. Whether that will happen or not.
It's a very involved thing. I think it's some of the best stuff, because admittedly, I think we touched on the one that mentioned about Herman Cain.
Yeah.
I
talk about that. Let's segue. Keep going. I'll segue right into that.
Okay, well, Herman Cain, I was a happy supporter of him. He's a great man. He had a lot of energy. He had a lot of great ideas. I think he would have been.
I think he was railroaded with that affair.
I think there was a lot of trouble going on there that went against him. I really don't think it was really totally his fault. And I think he would have been a great candidate. And I got into my mistake. I was that person that, and it's funny that I'm running now, is that when you're always going to go, you should always think you're the best candidate there is. And I tell anybody right now, if you want to run for office, do it. If you don't like what you're governed, then get out there and run your service. Do it. Yeah, it costs money, and it can be tough, but in the grand scheme of things, it's better just get that word out there. Because if you lose this time because you didn't have enough money, people are going to remember you next time around. Maybe they'll give you more money next time around. Just get your name out there. You know what used to happen?
They see you keep coming back. And that's one thing I've noticed with doing this show since 2008 is I interview a ton of candidates, but very few of them come back the next election cycle to repeat the process again. A lot of them jump in. You don't see them again. And it's money, and they have their personal reasons. But you're right. If you can, even if you lose this this election cycle, keep your hat in the ring, keep going on, keep your office open, keep that going, and come back in the next election cycle. More people. I was explaining this to a guy that I interviewed from Texas a couple of weeks ago. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to keep his hat in, and you just have to slow rise over time. It might take you 3 or 4 times to get it, but by the time that 4th, maybe even 5th time that you're running, it's practically a shoo-in for you.
And admittedly, what's sad, too, is that people are forgetting that historically, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, the first election ever, they did not campaign at all.
Even people like Ronald Reagan ran, I think, 4 times before he finally became president.
And
look at Romney. Romney, I think he's been running. He's not going to run again, but he kept running and running at every presidential election. And this last time was the closest he was ever going to get.
Well, what I'm more meant is that people need to get more involved and wrapped around candidates, even if they're ones that I totally support. I do hate that we're the lesser of 2 evils, but that's another part of the entertaining electoral process I like to see, because we get too far away from, we don't take time to really back candidates that we should, because historically, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, they never really campaigned themselves. Somebody else was doing it for them. They had their own people. And we really should take the time, like me. One of the things that I did, and this time I met Herman Cain, was that I went up online and said, who's running for office? Admittedly, I lined myself with the Republicans, so the closest I can get. And really, sadly, we are a lesser 2 evils with the 2-party politics. No way around it. I do have another idea. We can talk later about how I think we can eliminate that. But in a sense, that's what it is. It's awful sometimes because sometimes we don't get the best people, but we get good people. Like I feel like Scott Brown. I like the guy. He's a great person. Not 100% of the issues I agree with. Maybe 60-40. That's right. Maybe 60-40. But he was a darn sight better than Elizabeth Warren or Martha Coakley on you. And I'm afraid to death of her running for governor now, and that's why I endorse Charlie Baker in the same way. Sure. And that's why too. I mean, I'm not really going to be exactly like me, but I really wish people had a lot of that mindset, that drive to say, these are the candidates running. Let's do what we can to get them elected. There's a whole bunch of people running. Right now, there's a whole bunch of people running. I don't know if people know them. There's Patricia St. Aubin. There is David Arcangelo, who's running for Secretary of the Commonwealth. And actually, I should say that Patricia St. Aubin is running for the Auditor's Office. There's also Mike Heffernan, who's running for the State Treasurer, as well as there's no one running for Attorney General. So if you're a lawyer and you want to run, I encourage you to get it now. We get somebody in that state. Exactly. Martha Coakley is tentatively on that ballot as well. So, just get her out.
Exactly.
One way or the other.
There's a whole plethora of Democrats and progressives running for. There's actually one. Her website. She claims to be a progressive, ultra left-wing Democrat. I forget her name, but there's a whole bunch of people running for governor. And Republicans, I think, I know of Baker and I know of Fisher, but I'm not sure if there's anybody else running it.
I think that's it for the
Yeah.
Republicans, yeah.
Keep going though about the Hurricane thing.
But yeah, I've been kind of sidetracked.
That's okay. We all
But,
this is the way we do it.
But, and with that, I love the debates. I think that is, I get afraid that people were upset with the debates. Like, they think they took away from it. I think that always helped us get in, and that's how I got behind Herman Cain. The very first debate that was on, I think it was on Fox News, he clearly won it, and I think he went on to win it every other time. And the fact that he was the one that stood up there the first time, and he was so well on the money with every comment made, I had to back him that moment. And then I went out of my way online to find ways to connect with him and other supporters out there. I know I became a friend of his on Facebook. I also got involved with a lot of people at the campaign, and they involved me in the campaign. And we had a lot of fun posts on it. Like I tried to find songs that could kind of paraphrase what he was doing. Like I joked, like that song "Power of Love" by Huey Lewis.
Yeah.
I revised the lyrics so it's like "Power of Cain," Don't need no credit card to ride the Cain train, stuff like that. People, of course, made the "Rock You Like Herman Cain," the Scorpion song.
Exactly. Right.
That's like the classic one, and that's like it's sad. It's historically true. People more often than not vote for the most entertaining candidate, which Herman Cain had. I'm not going to say that was his only thing, but admittedly, if people want to vote for the most, he was probably one of the more entertaining figures. That's why Reagan won. That's why Bush won and he lost. Because first time around, he was going against the guy that let rapists out.
That's right.
Swinging door policy.
Caucus of the Willie Horton.
And and he said, I'd be enraged if someone tried to rape my wife. No compassion. So that's you're gonna vote the guy that's obviously more compassionate. But then when he goes to a guy playing a saxophone, I want to vote for the guy with the saxophone. Yeah. So it seems very easy, for people, and I think it's sometimes who we are. We're very, especially now with social media, it's very easy to go for this. And in some ways, I say the same why Obama, because he does seem like a likable guy in the front. But until you deep down dig in and see what he's like, you realize this isn't good. This isn't good for America. If you really believe in the values and represent what this country started as, he is not that guy. Mitt Romney may not be perfect, but he was darn sight closer to than anything he was going to. Same thing with John McCain, although John McCain, I've been a little disappointed about some of the changes he's made politically in recent times, but he's still a Republican. If he ran again, I guess I'd back him in the end. And with Herman Cain, it was head over heels, but the way he was running his campaigns, what he said about 999, I'm a little he kind of departed from the fair tax, even though the fair tax was part 2 of 999 all along.
Exactly.
And I think what people fail to realize, they'll think it was like 2 taxes, but it wasn't. Because what it does is you're wiping out all taxes on the table, and then you just the corporate, just the personal income tax, and there was the other one. It's personal income and sales tax, of course. That's not where the fair tax would really come in. And it's simple, and it really, admittedly, I did the math, and you could, I don't know if it's still around, it's unfortunate. If you look up Herman Cain 999 calculator, something like that, you could probably find if there's still one floating around. Do the math, and you can type in the Massachusetts sales tax. I did the math. I make the post this all the time. Like I said, I was a big supporter. And every morning, I used to buy a cup of coffee in my work at a coffee shop. It'd be $4.15. Put the amount in divided the pre-tax amount, which I think was like $4 or something. Whatever. Put that amount in the calculator, and I entered in the Massachusetts sales tax and the 9%. I only would be paying $3.75. It is, I would have been taking in the assumption that businesses will lower their prices on the fact that now they're not paying all these other taxes. Because right now, people try to call it a value-added tax. That's kind of what we have now. Anything you buy in the store, you're paying the baker's tax that he made to make the bread. You're paying if you're getting a sandwich, you're paying whoever got the tomatoes. You're paying that on every piece of it. You're paying on every piece of it. And I would think, in most cases, small businesses, they make money by being the cheaper guy out there. They have that opportunity. Like I thought one time getting a consultant job. The way I get in there is being cheaper than that other consultant. That's how you do it. That's how you usually break in. You be cheaper than the other guy. And admittedly, it would create that opportunity for that. And I also believe, too, it would go a long way to get deflation, which I think, in the situation where we need it. Because historically, if you look at the world and the way the economy has been historically, yes, things were, the job may not have been great. Yes, there may have been a lower minimum wage. But I think about it, if you're getting paid $1 an hour, maybe go back into before just after the Great Britain, the 1940s, You could buy a week's worth of groceries with a dollar.
Yeah, my parents, we all remember that. Well, you were born in '82. I was
Unfortunately, we had born under Reagan.
I was the last of the baby boomers, and I remember my parents not earning a lot of money, but they bought our house for $15,000 at 5.25% interest on a my father was working a blue collar job. He worked a grocery store, stocking shelves on the weekends and after work, and my mother didn't work. I don't remember not having a car. I don't ever remember not having a television set and food on the table and a warm house. And then there was money. We went to England. My mother has family over. We used to go to England. We went on a vacation every year. We went up to Canada a couple of summers. I remember I was talking to Jeff Boudreau, who was on the show a while ago, and he had mentioned that, see, none of that exists anymore for people unless you earn a really good living. And that what we all have to do now is everything is just trying to get through the week. Everything is just trying to survive. And my wife and I, we work very hard at what we do. And we don't buy a lot. We don't spend. We're not frivolous. But there's not a lot left over. There really isn't. We'd like to go away this summer. We weren't able to do it last year. And when we say go away, yeah, we'd like to go up to Hampton Beach for the weekend. Or maybe we'll go up to Wells, Maine for the weekend and, rent a cheap motel kind of thing. We don't want to go to the Ritz or anything like that, but we can't do that.
Yeah, and it's funny, you talk about vacations. Yes, because it's funny, you talk about Obama, everybody gets upset. And technically, he is doing on taxpayer dollars the money that we're supposed to pay him. He'll go on all these vacations. It's kind of a slap in the face, though, when people are struggling and you're going on all these extravagant vacations. I don't care who you are. I don't think FDR was going on all these vacations like that when during the Great Depression. He went to Worcester, Georgia, went in his pool to his polio. I don't think any harm in that. He wasn't like bloated in the face. It almost seems like Obama was trying to celebrate the fact that he's got this wonderful house to live in all these benefits. Now,
FDR had his place in the Hamptons, and there's a great biography. There was actually a movie that was put out about it. Bill Murray's in it, and I forget the other, Laura Linney was in it. But it was based on a biography that was written about it. And what FDR used to do, and this was before Camp David, FDR used to use it for diplomacy. He had the King and Queen of England over there, just up to the onset of World War II. He used to have parts of captives come out there, and he used to work out on the White House during it would be like his second White House, again, before Camp David. It was a great biography, but it wasn't like he was out there vacationing and playing golf and not doing anything. It was just kind of like his way of getting away from the hustle of Washington, where he could concentrate, meet with people from around the world, and actually hash out problems and figure things out, so that when he did come back to Washington, we've got a solution to the problem, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is with the vacations, kind of go back.
But Obama's not doing it. He's just shooting golf.
Yeah, he just wants to have fun and enjoy himself. And it's something, yes, he works hard, he should do it, but does he have to go to that extreme? It's almost, and then, too, worse, when he's blocking traffic in town because we want to do it, and he's up in Martha's Vineyard, we want to do it, he's blocking traffic because we need all that security for him. And actually, that's something you debated, too, is why are we at the point that the president needs so much security? Although some argue that Abraham Lincoln needed more security. But because we're at a time of war? Because in some ways, John Wilkes Booth was more of a military combatant than just your average Joe Schmo. He wasn't a U.S. citizen at the time. He was at that point, it was a foreign country attacking its president. So, and that's a different type of protection than someone from at home. And I really wondered if the reason why that it's right, but why some people would want to kill the president is because they feel like the president's too involved in their own lives. Although it's tough to say, though, because looking at more recent attempts, I don't know if that necessarily was John Hinckley's angling for when he attempted Ronald Reagan. I don't know if Sarah Jane Moore or what was the other one she was with Charles Manson?
Squeaky Fromm.
Yeah, Squeaky Fromm went after Jerry Ford. Or Lee Harvey Oswald, which admittedly, I'll tell you right now, I'm on the fence of what really happened.
Sure, me too.
I don't know if I trust the Warren Commission or not. And admittedly, too, I used to be, because I'm not a Democrat at all, I'm admittedly coming around to liking John F. Kennedy a lot more, because he really was against a lot of higher taxes. He was much more, and he didn't like the Federal Reserve. I don't know if we eliminate the Federal Reserve from the get-go, but I definitely think it's maybe run its course.
Definitely, yes, run its course, and it's definitely part of the problem.
And it's maybe like him a lot more, but some argue, I don't know if it's true, that may be why he became a target, because JFK was against the Federal Reserve. He wanted to eliminate it, and that made him a potential target. And entity violence is never the answer, but I really wonder if it's the society we created, which made people think, that they need to attack. Because historically, our thought they would need to do it. We're a system of laws, and maybe it's the point that we've led a society where there's too much control. Because essentially, that's why, admittedly, why people forget why the Second Amendment is there. It's where the government gets out of control. So it's debatable whether or not somebody would do this if they're acting, they're out their Second Amendment rights or not. And I get into a lot of debates with people that are saying almost to give up now because everything's so bad. Don't even bother voting. Because I think, honestly, in a large way, if we work together, the ballot is much more powerful than a bullet. And the bullet should only be the extreme last resort. And I get frustrated when people try to say that we're at that point now that we need to start getting bullets. No, we still got a chance here. It's not that bad. It may feel like that. Because I feel I'm quick to jump to anarchy as a solution all the time. And that's not the answer either. That's why, in some ways, too, is I do like a lot of libertarian ideas. I do try to find a lot of libertarian solutions. That I too often find that a lot of libertarians, they come off like anarchists, particularly the anarcho-capitalists. Sure. Not to put down the libertarian, because in general, grand scheme of things, they've got a lot of the right ideas. That's why I like Ron Paul. In the grand scheme of things, what he wanted to do was great. It just seemed way extreme for what, because I think, honestly, I take a little bit from the John Birch Society, whereas, far left means total extreme government, and far right means no government whatsoever. And I honestly believe that a true conservative is really a moderate. Not what we call a moderate right now. Because really, what the founders really wanted was a delicate balance between anarchy and oligarchy. They wanted to make sure that we're not totally oppressed, but we're free. And to only have a civil society, you need to keep working to put one bill on top of another bill to counteract that until, so that way it's a perfect society. And that's what it's intended, but I think we've gone so far to the left that it scares people. And admittedly, too, there's a lot of Republicans who are supposed to be on our side, and we have to call them rhinos and moderates, because they keep caving into a few of those little left ideas.
They certainly do. They keep thinking that if they become more acquiescent and more like the left, and in fact, the term is floating out there, they're called Republicrats now. Yeah. That maybe we can win elections, maybe we can, open things up more to this demographic or that demographic, and that's a terrible mistake that they're making. I think they should. Because that is going so far left, I think you almost have to fight fire with fire now, is that you have to push a more conservative candidate, possibly a far-right conservative. I agree. Almost like a Reaganette, like that Christian coalition that helped get him, only to bring back balance, because it is so far left, you need to get a heavy weight on the other side just to balance out that seesaw.
What they're afraid of? They're afraid that we're going to lose the independent vote, and they go right after the independent vote without the base. And the truth is, we can't win without the base. And the truth is, what Ronald Reagan did that was right is he brought in the base, and he was able to bring in a good number of right-leaning independents. And that's what we need. We need somebody that can be like Ronald Reagan. Admittedly, though, because like I said, Ronald Reagan was very entertaining, former actor. He had a very great presence. I mean, there you go again. Yeah. Or,
let's not let my opponent's youth and whatever he said.
Or I am paying for this microphone, Mr. Green. He really had a way to catch the audience. So, and that's why, too, I'll say right now, I like Ted Cruz. I like Rand Paul. Do they really have the oomph to really catch people, to really win? I don't know. And especially too, after what happened with Herman Cain, I really wonder what's in store for anybody who tries to be like Herman Cain. Right. That off the wall, I think it goes back to one of our mistakes, and this is why I don't like third parties, because we have a two-party system. And it kind of goes to what I was talking before about my idea for eliminating a two-party system. Is that no matter what, they're going to be spoiled. I honestly I don't think the Democratic Party probably would be gone or on its way out had Ross Perot stayed out in 92 and 96.
Certainly.
I still feel like
George Bush's book, Decision Points, and I read that book. He covered that chapter, his father losing the election, and he didn't really have too kind words for Ross Perot, and he was. It wasn't like he was using negativity towards Ross Perot as an individual. He was using it as far as it was the wrong thing to do, the wrong thing to do professionally. And if you wanted to run for president, you should have waited till my father finished his second term. Challenge Clinton in an open election. But
because admittedly, I mean, I did the math. I mean, it's tough to say if all Perot voters would have gone to Bush.
it was quite literally, basically, less than. If you split the numbers, you know, it ranged between 38% and 34% and 36%, whatever the numbers were. You know, when you really boil it down, a third of the electorate, the people who voted, actually elected our president. And here's where the numbers, somebody else cracked these numbers down even worse. That's just people that voted.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not the entire general population. So you're looking at President Clinton, oh, he won by a landslide. Less than 10% of the American people.
He won by 40, I think it was 43%.
Yeah, some weird number like that.
Yeah.
How do you win by that?
That's not really
Only because it was a third. That's not a win.
That's not a way, unless you get over. That's why I think, too, is if you look at history, since Ronald Reagan, we haven't had a candidate win. Democrats are over 50%. Sure. Or 55%.
And here's what the thing, in one of my exposés, I was writing about voter fraud. It's a big 5-part thing that I did. One of the things that I had uncovered in my research is exactly what you just said is we haven't had a major election where anything's gone over 50%. Another interesting thing that comes out is when you have a majority a win, like let's say it's 54% to 46%, you have a big number like that. Two things happen. One, you know that the nation is behind this person. Two, it eliminates the possibility of voter fraud because the gap is too big. When the gap gets between 1% and 2%, the potential for voter fraud, it's enormous. Because that's one reason why the vote is because you have a lot of people casting fake ballots just because, oh, we're going to lose, but we might not lose. We might only lose by 1 or 2 points if we do this.
Yeah. And admittedly, too, and I still wonder, I mean, it's tough to say, and it's one because of the machine the Democrats have. I still wonder if there's a lot of fraud in elections. I read somewhere, I wish I could find where it was. Supposedly, Massachusetts, I think we had 129% voter turnout.
Yeah,
how is that
Massachusetts is a big state. That's a big voter fraud state. Again, all my research. Georgia's a big state. Maryland, Delaware. I said Georgia, what the hell? I want to say Florida, but Florida really became the center of the spotlight because of what happened in 2000, and I covered that all in the expose. And it just, again, it's also perception too, because after it was finally decided Bush is going to be the president, the big mantra was that Bush stole the presidency.
Yeah.
When I went through my research. It turns out that it was Al Gore who was originally trying to tilt the whole thing by starting off by having ballots recounted only in his primarily Democrat districts. And in those districts, well, of course he was ahead. They're primarily Democratic districts. And the reason why Bush finally got into it and sued is because there was a violation of the 14th Amendment protection, equal protection under the clause. And so he said, and the Supreme Court of Florida agreed. It's like, he's right. If you're going to recount the votes, you got to recount every single vote all across the state. And what they found out is even though eventually they put a halt to it because they kept recounting, and every time Bush kept coming out ahead. And then finally in the last recount, when they stopped it, which everybody complained about, is technically at this point in time, Al Gore was a little bit ahead. But the Supreme Court said, no, that's it. We're getting too close to the deadline. This is it. Give the electoral votes to Bush. Bush becomes president. Well, come to find out later on, an independent group went in and recounted those last ballots. Again, George Bush won.
Yeah. It kind of goes to the idea I said this before, because we had a system where it was really popular vote in specific cities and towns. You'd see a whole lot, because we were looking at, like, specifically Miami, specifically these towns, and seeing where that, right, we probably would have found much quicker, oh, Bush obviously won. If we'd see easily where the fractions were that were the ones in question, would it be like whole Nash County that we have to say right now we're eliminating that. And also, the argument we're going to make that if it's because that's the case, then why did anybody claim that Benjamin Harrison stole the election of 1888? Or rather, well, some of us still think Rutherford B. Hayes stole the election in 1876, because debatably, I don't think he won, get a little story, I don't think he ended Reconstruction a little too soon. But some argue that that was the promise, and he supposedly told some of the Southern Democrats, hey, if you let me win, I'll end the Reconstruction. It's the argument that happened. I don't know, supposedly, it's a lot of argument that conversation never took place. There's something to do, but it's very funny that the register ended immediately after, and I still wonder if it was too soon, and probably why we have a lot of the race problem we have today, why we had segregation going on for so long. Now, I'll remind you, yes, the Democrats put the Jim Crow laws in place. They did. The Democrats voted against the Civil Rights Movement.
They did. They certainly did. In fact, in my research of voter fraud, I found time and time again, and there were various independent research groups who studied all this voter fraud, where I got a lot of my information from. It is, I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for this. I don't care. It's my show. It is Democrat-driven. It really is. In fact, there's a national plan, there's a national trend towards that. Hillary Clinton tried to get a voter law put through just prior to her run for the presidency itself. The organizations that are out there, there's one called the New Organizing Institute. All of these are openly admitted progressivist, liberal voting organizations. And their whole design is to nationalize the voting system to get everybody hooked up into a central database, go out into poor neighborhoods, rural areas, get all these people registered and put into this database. On the surface, that sounds like a good idea. Let's get everybody registered. But these are openly progressive, admittedly liberal groups. You know which way they're going to have you registered to vote. In fact, what will end up happening is because some of these people, and it's on their website, the New Organizing Institute, what they will do is they will put your name in, and if you can't get to the ballot, they'll actually cast your ballot for you. Now, you know which way they're going. So it's a national trend. Republicans have been accused of voter fraud. What I've been able to find, and what some of these other independent groups, yes, it exists. It's a local thing, a mayoral race, maybe a congressman here in some rural area, or some other state representative who just happens to have a lot of pull in a certain area. There's no national trend as far as Republicans are concerned. It just simply, I couldn't find anything. But in the Democrats, you just go on YouTube, just go on Google, just search it, and the screen lights up with all these progressive, liberal, organized, Acorn is molded into something else. It's everywhere.
It's kind of the same way they try to say that, the Tea Party is so violent people and we want these violent things. Show me one video where you see a bunch of the Tea Party where they're all being violent. But then also encourage you to you'll find plenty of progressive liberal videos where they're talking about off with these people's heads and things, because
look what they did in Wisconsin during the
Occupy protest.
Look at the Occupy people. Yeah, converting things. Every time I've ever been to a Tea Party protest, a Tea Party rally, we're like drinking coffee, joking, having fun, just holding our signs, doing our thing. When we have our meetings, we go down to I told you, we go down to the Canal Bar. We're going to be there on the 20th. They love having us down there because we fill the room, we all order food and drinks. And even the waitresses and like the bartenders stand outside, they'll keep an eye on the bar, making sure that, no customers are coming in, but they'll stand there because they want to hear what we have to say. And it's a wonderful, warm, it's a nice atmosphere to be around. And you're right, I've never seen that at all. I've been involved with this group 2008, never seen it.
And in the same way, too, is I hate the misconception that we're all old, white, rich people. Like I said, I make $40,000 a year. Last I checked, that's not rich. I'm only 31 years old, and unfortunately I'm white. But you know what? You don't forget, there's a lot of great black conservatives that I love. Thomas Sowell is a genius. Walter Williams is another genius.
Exactly.
And of course I love Herbie King. There's also Ben Carson. Although admittedly I was disappointed to hear he's not really a full supporter of the Second Amendment.
Really?
It's just kind of sad to hear. But other than that, there's a lot of great black conservatives out there that I'm more than happy to support, that I will cast my vote for. And no, I don't feel like oppressed by them, and I'm not going to, I don't know where they get these ideas from. There's something that somehow with just because I'm a Republican, somehow I'm against black people. There's nothing to say that. If I'm willing to vote for black, it has to be my representative, my president. How is that? I mean, that would be contradictory. And it's funny, although there's been disputes to go against it,
maybe even being associated with Tea Party groups.
Well, it's funny though, is the majority that I bumped into, because I did most of my signature collecting at the local Leominster Market Basket, which is a great store, very peaceful. They just redid the whole store, it's very nice. But the most that I met there,
Yeah.
sorry about
See that? You gotta shut them phones off.
I didn't know I had the ringer. But
That's all right.
you know what happened was is that I met the people, and well, I met. I said, so tell me a little bit about your background. I said, I'm a Republican. That's all I needed to know. Believe it or not. There were a few people that said, well, admittedly, I go Democrat. I said, that's fine, although I know how much their signature would help me. But but it was very mixed with some people happy to hear change. Some people didn't even know who the opponent was. They thought, oh, my opponent would be Mr. Dennis Rosa. Some people didn't even know who he was. Some people knew who he was. Some people said they admittedly liked him, but they were happy to see there as an alternative on the ballot.
Sure.
There were some people that were very interested. There's a woman I met who sounded very conservative. She, was very against like the immigration type of laws, sort of things like that, and really, really passionate about these things. But then she told me she wants us to move to single payer. So it's like we've got very.
Yeah.
That's why I love about Leominster. I think it's a great people. We got people with very different minds and very, we come together and make compromise. Because I think that's why I think what is great about libertarians is that you can find a way to make compromise solution without compromising your principles. It kind of gets into some of the things that I feel about more controversial, like gay marriage, for example. Yeah. See, what I bring it back down to is we have to look at it. I look at it from two channels. There's a religious point of view, and then there's also a human right point of view. You have the right to fall in love with whoever you want. But admittedly, the concept of marriage is derived from religion first. And I say, well, why do we have the government performing marriages? Would we want the government performing christenings and bat mitzvahs? Why would we want them to do that if we don't, and let them then do what a marriage is? And that's why I asked, well, do you really want to be quote-unquote marriage? It's really a religious institution. Now, mind you, and that's the other thing, too, is if you really want to be quote-unquote marriage, you should find a religion that will endorse your partner. Unitarian Universalists are a great example of it. They truly support the concept of gay marriage. There are other churches that don't, and I don't think it necessarily implies hatred. It just means that their constitution, what they believe a marriage is not meant for two men or two women. That's all it is. That's not to say that I don't think the government should have some in place for anybody. And I think it's whether you're straight or gay, that you can have your relationship recognized by the law if you wanted to. If you want to be able to get tax benefits for it, whether you're straight or gay, you should be able to have something to do it. And whether you're quote-unquote married or not, should have no difference as far as the law or not. Which is why, yes, I'm more of a supporter for domestic partnerships. Sure. But admittedly, domestic partnerships should apply for everybody.
Exactly. I was just going to say, domestic partnerships, because I call her my wife, she and I have been together for 18 years. We're not married. We still, to this day, have to have separate insurance. And there's also the problem of adjudication. We have a daughter together, and believe it or not, in the state of Massachusetts, for some reason, family court, child services, everybody involved in that neck of the woods. And there's another thing that I'm writing about on my blog, is that she's the parent. I'm not the adjudicated father. Even though I was there and I helped bring her into the world, and I've been part of her entire life, and we've been together for 18 years, my wife and I, according to the court, I'm not really the legal father. The mother is the legal mother. She has all rights. If something happens, she's going to get the welfare and all the other stuff. If there's a problem going on, the state is going to jump right on top of her and help her and hold her hand. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm just some guy that's in her life. It's really disgustingly discriminatory. So a domestic partnership, that's where I come in. I don't care about if you're gay and you want all these rights, that's fine. I want mine first, is what I want.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you should come first. You should always.
I'm saying I want mine first before you guys get yours. Don't start picking these special groups when there's millions of other Americans out there in my type of situation who are on the crap end of the stick.
Yeah. I think everybody should have the opportunity to have their relationship recognized by the law. There should be no cutting of line. Everybody should get it. If you want your relationship recognized by law, sign up for a domestic partnership and get that later on so you can see your partner in the house, whether you're straight or gay. Right. You can collect the tax but register it as equal partners. If you want to be quote-unquote married, find a church that will support your religion. And there are Unitarian Universalists. There are some Christian churches that have gone back and forth on that issue a little bit. And admittedly, I'm hearing there's some question of it. Supposedly, I heard something about the new pope. What's the gentleman's name? The new pope of the church?
I don't know
his name. Supposedly, he had said something to the end that much more tolerable. I don't know if that means
to change the way the Catholic.
I don't know if the church is going to allow gay marriage in that court, but that's a possibility.
That's a long way down the road.
And admittedly, not to get out there, but of course, atheists. Although I mean, it's not necessarily religion. If you're an atheist, I mean maybe that's the route.
Yeah, find your own organization.
Or Wiccans and pagans, they do believe in gay marriage. And I guess it really comes out of finding what the religious practice that's best for you, and what group you want to be a part of to express your quote-unquote marriage with.
And while we're on the subject of religion, out west there's the World War I memorial cross that's out there. It's been up there since 1925. 1925, that thing is sitting there. Now, puff out of nowhere, atheist groups want it torn down. I'm not going to get you into a religious debate, but it seems like a lot of these groups, they purposely go and find these things to be offended by. Well, what I mean by that is this thing has been standing there since 1925. Nobody's said a hoot about the whole thing since 1925. Now suddenly out of nowhere, an atheist group says it violates a church and state, it's going to upset the Muslims, it's going to upset this group, which I always find crazy because you don't believe in anything anyway, so why are you worried about something somebody else believes in? It just seems like, and it brings me back to what the gays, it seems like they want to purposely find organizations, religions, companies. Look at the cake company that had to go out of business because they didn't want to make a cake for a gay wedding. They find these things and they target these things, and these things become the focus of attention. And it's these organizations, they're the ones, they're full of hate. They're the ones, they're being intolerant. Like, look, we were just here running our cake company, minding our own business. You know, we don't care. We just don't believe in that, and we don't want to be part of that. Oh, no, you're intolerant, so we're going to take you to court. Same thing with the cross. Oh, it's intolerant. Thing's been standing there since 1925, minding its own business.
Yeah, I guess, as the cake company, too, I could make the same argument. I want to make a cake. So I can take a straight example of somebody urinating on the street. Would they have the right to say, no, we're not making you a cake with somebody urinating on the street?
Oh, you're violating their right to free expression.
Because I want to make a cake that, and it makes an interesting debate of whether or not they have the right to do it or not. But I also go back and forth ahead then, too, because it does get to the idea of, well, I don't, when you talked about, about racism with black people, say I was a cake maker that said that, I don't like black people, I'm not going to make a cake with a black person on it. Is that against the law? Should that be against the law? I would be kind of hard to say, well, maybe that should be against the law. Why do I have to discriminate against you? I guess maybe the right answer, the cake maker said, it's not our specialty. We can try it, but we can't guarantee what the results will look like.
Well, we can show you, we can point you to a company that will.
Yeah, and maybe that would have been the more professional way to handle. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I don't know the details of it.
I mean, when you're offended by someone, you're offended by someone. You don't necessarily look at all the ramifications of you're upset. So I don't know what the alternative as far as the cross and with the atheists in general they get upset about. I think the problem with the atheists is that we've created a society where religion kind of comes first, and they're kind of that other group that's that they can do what they want. But the thought is that they're not as respected, which I think is kind of unfair when we are supposedly, even though separate church really isn't specifically in the Constitution, I do think it's sort of alluded to, because we are a church, a country that does believe in freedom of religion. And in some ways, no religion is a freedom of religion.
I think what they miss in the clause, though, is you cannot abridge the free expression thereof. And something like the World War I monument it's a private thing that was put up. And is it on town property? Yes, it is on town property, but the Constitution protects that. Yeah. Because it's public property, the Constitution, we cannot abridge your free exercise thereof.
Well, then open up an atheist one that does the same thing then, if it makes them feel better. That's why I'm all for that. Like, I get some of these people that will, they'll get upset that people put a Christmas tree up around the holidays in town. night for ourselves to decide what we think is right, and we'll find out in the end. Our maker will tell us, you were wrong, Mr. Phillipo. You shouldn't have been a Catholic, or he'll tell me you were right all along, and God bless you, welcome to heaven. And we'll all find out that answer eventually.
David, this has been great.
Oh,
Thanks for coming on. So where are you showing up next? Tell us what's down the line for you.
Okay, well, I'm trying to do a lot of local events. There's been a full calendar because like it's really early on in the stages. I am gonna probably try to collect more signatures. I got a little over 150 right now. I was gonna drop those in on
150 or 150,000?
150. Only need 150.
Oh, really?
For state rep. But the question is, something might be on ballot. Unfortunately, I thank you. There were 3 people that I said specifically I need Leominster voters, and they put down their Sterling and Ayer addresses. Thank you, Wayne. He's old, but I'm hoping that doesn't hold me back. But there is something I might have to go back and get some more. So you might see me again at the local market basket in Leominster or other areas around the community, collecting signatures or any. I'm gonna try to be as many local events as I can. I commute to work in Waltham, so I'm gonna try to go back and forth between the two.
Yeah, you're gonna be busy. Is there anybody else running for Republican? Is it just you?
For the state rep?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm running unopposed at least for a Republican nomination.
And Dennis is running unopposed on the Democrat.
Yeah, there's no one
Yeah,
against
he's been coming, so he's
he was elected first in 2008. He ran against another girl named Claire Freda, who I've yet to meet.
I remember her, yeah.
And then in 2010, he was unopposed. In 2012, he ran against a gentleman named Justin Brooks, who I met, and he had a very good campaign again. I'm surprised Justin lost, but he did. It was a very good campaign, and I have some support from Justin, so hoping that some of that luck will carry over to me too.
And, yep, keep me in the loop, and I'll post everything up on the page, and we'll have you back on the show. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
It was a great time. That was a great conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for that.